welcome to another episode of Omaha, West America. We're here with our friendly sheriff from Douglas County. You were very kind to make the trek down here to be on our podcast and talk about all things law, order, and more importantly, anything that comes into your mind or into ours.
Way out of my jurisdiction.
Sheriff Hanson, thank you.
Sheriff Hanson, couldn't be happier than having you here. Really appreciate you making the effort to come down. Thank you. We tell everybody that Omaha, West America is extemporaneous, and it's just a multi-syllable word to say we have no idea what we're talking about.
Perfect. That's the best kind of podcast.
I know. I mean, we get to talk about anything.
That's why certain people won't come on.
Well, it is.
We might lead them someplace, but I'm not worried about leading you.
Well, sometimes we get them talking about stuff they may not want to talk.
Yeah.
Sam, if I go running for the door, you got my back, okay?
All right.
Wait,
Don't
go
go
back
tripping
up.
like the last
Radio
time.
doesn't work here, so we're good.
I must have full disclosure. So for about 15 years, I've listened to a certain radio program in the morning, KFAB. I'm giving them a little plug. And Sheriff Hanson over the last 3 years has been on frequent guest. And I had the pleasure of meeting Sheriff Hanson about 3 years ago, exactly in the fall, up in a football suite. A friend of yours and a friend of Peg and mine's, and Peg and I have kept in contact with Sheriff Hanson and listened to him. You're on there pretty frequently on KFAB, covering a variety of issues that concern Omaha and Douglas County.
Speaking of issues, I'm sorry to interrupt. Are you concerned you're going to have an issue being here because you've still got your vest on and you're recording? I can't speak for the ginger, but the rest of us.
Yeah, I don't know you.
Well, that's a good point.
You know, I always.
So you know slags.
He just walked in here. He's from Homeridge.
And I am sorry. I was late arriving.
That's all right. It's all right. No, it was a good drive. It was like driving down to Lincoln. Usually I'm down here, testifying at Judiciary Committee or trying to talk sense into state senators about keeping common sense in our public safety public policies. But good, actually, we've had a lot of good success over the last couple of years. This last legislative session, we had a lot of good support from Governor Pillen and the new chair of the Judiciary Committee, Chairwoman Senator Bozen, and we've rolled back some juvenile justice laws that kind of hamstrung law enforcement all across the state. We work really well with our leaders down in the state.
Well, that's great to
To our
hear.
listeners, some of the hamstrung situations that you've run into with juvenile violence and laws, juvenile crime.
Public policy on criminal justice is always going to be complex, right? Because you've got people with good intentions that come up with good ideas that they think are good ideas, whether it's prison reform or juvenile justice reform or some other type of public policy that impacts public safety. And rarely, I always know that the warning flag goes up when they don't come to us in law enforcement and ask for our boots on the ground practitioner expert opinion, or they'll come to us really quickly to check the box and say, "Hey, we're this big group, we're a think tank from out of state, and we're here to, promote common sense when it comes to public safety policy, and we'd like to meet you for 15 minutes so we can check the box and say we did." The best ideas usually come from grassroots, and that, not to say law enforcement has all the answers, but we have a lot of perspective. Policies being discussed that impacts public safety.
Some of the things that have happened, there's been some situations where young people have actually shot and killed people up in Omaha, and I'm sure around the state, and certainly here in Lincoln. And some of our laws have impacted your ability to address those. Have you not?
Yeah, we took for many years. We took the teeth out of juvenile justice, and so you ended up with a scenario where, all even 80% of juvenile justice reform was well intended and works, right? I mean, you don't want to drop the hammer on low risk kids that made one mistake. I mean, you don't want to lock up kids that just had a bad day or maybe need a little bit of redirection. But the problem is in that juvenile justice reform package that happened it didn't account for the 20% that are extremely dangerous, not only to the public, but to themselves. And so we ended up with essentially a revolving door where juveniles would get arrested for a serious offense, maybe an auto theft, and then they immediately be released, or they couldn't even be booked into a youth center. We saw juvenile detention capabilities closing across the state, making it more difficult to even be able to detain high-risk kids. I mean, in large swaths of the state of Nebraska, if law enforcement wants to detain a kid who's high risk, they have to drive hours away and incur copious amounts of overtime if they don't otherwise decide to just release the kid to the very home that probably doesn't have the support systems in place that resulted in their behavior. So, I think there's a lot of true believers out there with good intentions that want the best for kids. Law enforcement wants the best for kids, but quite frankly, some of these reforms were just flat out naive, and it resulted in the death of a lot of innocent people. Yeah, a lot of juvenile offenders going to prison for the rest of their lives.
I think it's hard. Go ahead.
I was going to say, so what do we experience as a state of Nebraska, or at least in Douglas County, as far as recidivism? You get someone into the juvenile criminal justice system, they might overlap, come out of it as an adult or right on becoming an adult, at least as we legally define that. What's your recidivism rate? What percentage is going to go on and commit violent crime or, felonious crimes that result in them being into the adult criminal justice system? Do we have that much success?
Well, I will say again, I think we have a lot of success on the low risk kids.
Okay.
And a lot of the low risk kids, diversion or probation will work. But if you don't have enough diversity of tools in the toolbox for the mid-level risk kids that are trending high, or the high risk kids, you're going to be in trouble. And so, for example, there was a study done here recently over the last few years. The sheriff's office and the Omaha Police Department looked at some data, and I think it was in 2023, we had 53 unique juvenile offenders in Douglas County who had been arrested for at least 5 separate felonies. And so one thing we know, this isn't just in Douglas County, it's not just in Lincoln, this is across the nation. I hear this from my peer sheriffs all the time, that the entryway to homicide is auto theft.
Really?
Because
the
entry point to a homicide is an auto theft, because auto thefts are typically not one-offs, they happen in sprees. Why do young gang members, why do young criminals steal cars? To commit other crimes, not just to drive around and pick up a cheeseburger. And so we see that upward trend of the auto theft progressing to the carjacking, progressing to the drive-by shooting, progressing to the homicide. And if you don't have a way to cut that trend line off, then it will continue to progress. One challenge we have in Nebraska is, we've got Douglas County has a juvenile detention facility. Lancaster County has a juvenile detention facility. Madison County has I think a 14-bed juvenile detention facility. But outside of that, most of these facilities are either staff secure, meaning literally the kid just has to push a door open and walk away and maybe be dissuaded by a staff member. And it is not legal for our group homes or other facilities that are not public facilities to have secure detention. Well, that makes no sense, right? The activists will say that if a juvenile can't just walk through the door, if he can't think in his head that he or she can just walk through the door to freedom, that's traumatic and injurious to their growth. Well, you know what, in my opinion, is more traumatic is walking through that door, running away, being human trafficked, shot at, or committing a crime that will result in you being locked up in prison for the rest of your life. And so that's going to be hopefully future sessions, finding ways to allow for legal, secure programming. Not that every kid needs that, But the kids that need secure programming, the kids that have the one cycle mentality deeply ingrained in their brain, they definitely need that, not only for their safety, but the safety of the public.
Wow.
So I think there's a prevailing thought that maybe law enforcement is penal and mean and you can use a lot of other words to describe it. But what I'm hearing from you is a compassion for these young people to help rehabilitate and give them a pathway or give them the guidance, give them the structure, whatever it might be.
And we heard that from Nate Hill last week, a lead investigator for LPD. I mean, I heard compassion from Nate, I'm hearing compassion from you. That's a stark contrast to this whole police thing we've been hearing about for the past several years.
We don't get that narrative. I think Matt Munn's point is we listen to a lot of news cycles from a lot of different places, but we don't hear that compassion side of law enforcement. I think that's something lost.
Yeah, I mean, I think
willfully.
Yeah, something surprised.
It's really pretty simple. Kids thrive for structure, and kids thrive for consistency. Whether they admit it or not, whether they know it or not, that's what they want. Kids want to feel safe. And so even with high-risk kids, most of these high-risk kids are traumatized. They either were traumatized through their upbringing, maybe through poor parenting, they were traumatized through violence that they have witnessed or been inflicted on them, or that they have inflicted on others, which is also traumatizing. Or many who were traumatized through sexual trauma, girls and boys. It's more common than you would like to think. And so, it comes down to, in my opinion, just basic parenting. Sometimes I'm not even talking about the parents themselves parenting their kids. That's the best case scenario. We wish our parents would parent their own kids. But when the parents can't or won't, the system needs to step in and recreate that structure, that consistency, almost surrogate parent the child. I hate it. We wish that wasn't the case. We wish government didn't have to do that. But we know there's a fair share of parents that just refuse to do it. We can't just give up.
No, that's the compassion that I hear, and the pushback on that would be, what would it be if you wanted to provide that structure and that support and that?
Well, the sheriff talked about these activists have this view, and I will use the word romanticized, that their idea, well-intentioned, and we've acknowledged that, is the pathway for long-term, broad-based success for at-risk kids. But it sounds like on occasion there is a lack of common sense. There's certainly, in some of those cases that have not been as successful as they might be, they maybe didn't have sufficient input beyond a 15-minute check the box with the sheriff and other boots on the ground. But the other side of it is we invest money, we invest time, we invest resources. The private sector will eventually, if something isn't working, you cut it off. If it's losing money, you cut it off. If you're not getting a return on your investment, and it's easy, we're measuring it with money. In this case, we're measuring it with lives, human capital. But there is still profound resistance, in my opinion, to cut something off. If it's not working, you cut it off and you try something different.
Well, that's to your point again. I said it before, I'll say it again. I think that the nonprofit groups, the activist groups, they're well intentioned.
Right.
Okay. But they're naive. They're naive. They don't understand. And they're not completely wrong. We want to treat these kids with compassion. But to say that one day in detention or being detained is one of the most traumatic things that a young offender could experience, it does not do justice to the fact that, I've personally known young people, young women, who were not detained, who should have been detained, and because they were not detained or in a secure facility, they were literally raped. In one case, I can think of a young lady who was raped with a beer bottle with the cap still on it. And so my question always to the nonprofit community is, do you think that's what's more traumatic? Okay, what's more traumatic? Being present in a drive-by shooting, being shot, or being in detention for a couple of days? I don't want kids locked up if we can prevent it. But the problem is it's a constant balancing act. And think about it with our own kids. If I tell my 15-year-old kid, if you walk out that door at 2 o'clock in the morning, you're in trouble, right? You're not going to walk out that door. And if I have to lock you in your room, lock the window, that's not traumatic to the child. At least it shouldn't be. That's just basic parenting. Sure. But somehow when we lay that over and compare it to like a detention setting or a rehabilitative setting, that's traumatic. I refute that.
You mentioned gangs and cartels earlier, and tell us about that. And I think we have some naivety in our state.
We do have naivete. I mean, the gangs are very much here. For a long time, Omaha and Douglas County had a profound problem, and it seems to have dissipated.
Yeah, I mean, Omaha's very fortunate. We have one of the best police chiefs in the nation, Todd Schmatter, probably one of the longest standing police chief in the nation for a major police department. He's organized a police department that is focused squarely on violence prevention. And as a result, we've seen consistent decreases in gang violence specifically because he's designed not only a gang unit, but a criminal investigation division and the felony assault unit and the homicide unit that has an exceptional clearance rate. And also, I think it's important to note that, they're putting right people in prison, right? I always scratch my head when I hear bureaucrats or politicians bemoaning our overcrowded prison system. And look, I don't want an overcrowded prison system either. But what I know is we got the right people in prison, right? We got the right people in prison.
We got that right.
And when you see the trend lines crossing prison population with violence, I mean that's life math, right? That means you have the right people in there. Now it's up to the state and the prison systems and parole to try to rehabilitate those folks if you can. Kind of like very similar to what we talked about in the juvenile system. But law enforcement, especially in Omaha, has done a really good job of taking a scalpel approach and removing the most high-risk offenders in our community.
Wow. So on that subject, I like that term, the scalpel approach. You're going back to it. You're basically saying we have this increase in the prison population, but at the same time we have a decrease in violent crime. Pretty clear and easy cause and effect. Do you get pushback when you make that comment? Activists, just well sayers, well doers, whatever.
Sure. Because,
but I mean, bear with me. I'll finish the question, Sheriff. What's their argument? I mean, it's so crystal clear. If you have an increase in prison population coinciding with a definite and demonstrable increase in violent crime, what's the argument?
Well, I think people get sidetracked off what the basic role of government is, right? To keep us safe.
Yeah.
Keep us safe, right? And to maintain infrastructure, right? Education, obviously, but the top two that I hear from people: keep me safe, make sure I have appropriate infrastructure to be able to get to work. You have, we've got people in leadership that would like to spend money on any other thing, and so you can imagine that if someone comes to the table and says, "Hey, we need another prison," well, you've got some people that will gasp. Either because they don't want people in prison or because they don't want to spend money on a prison. But in any event, you talk about those trend lines going opposite directions. That is an investment in a safer community.
Right.
In my mind, the measuring stick for whether or not we're doing it right in terms of rehabilitation or people deciding not to commit crimes is empty prison cells, right? Empty
not good to prosecute, but because people are making the right choices.
Yeah, not simply saying that we're going to dump people out of jail or prison early simply because it costs money to keep them in there. We want empty jail cells, empty prison cells should be the indicator of we're doing something right. Meanwhile, we've got the insurance policy that if we need them, that we can go back up if that trend line on violence starts to go in the wrong direction. And it's an investment. I mean, I think people see those things as costs. I look at it as an investment.
Good way to look
at it. And again, it's a core service of government.
Well, it is
that we owe it to the public to do right.
And it's an insurance policy, like you said. If we see a unfavorable turn in the incident of violent crime, we have that investment available to house the perpetrators.
And those are the kind of conversations I really like. That it's easier for a sheriff to have those conversations because
then who?
than probably anyone else in law enforcement. Because, you know,
so to explain a little bit of the difference for Matt and I and us, you were a 26-year police officer with OPD, is that
I
correct?
was, yep.
And then you decided to run as an elected official for Douglas County as sheriff. Explain the difference between the police department and the Douglas County Sheriff's Department.
Yeah.
And why it's easier for you to have that conversation than Chief Schmatter.
Well, I mean, not necessarily than Chief Schmatter, but there is a difference. Then there is a functional difference when it comes to sheriffs versus police chiefs, and I'll go into all that. But for the most part, municipal police departments and county sheriff's offices operate pretty similar, right? They respond to 911 calls in their primary jurisdiction, whether it's in a city or out in unincorporated Douglas County. Sheriffs have jurisdiction over an entire county, and police departments have jurisdiction in cities, so there's some overlapping jurisdiction there. But both agencies will do criminal investigative follow-up. They'll have investigators. But there's two things that make it unique. Number one, a sheriff's office has a statutory obligation to our criminal justice system. Actually, should restate that, to our court system. Okay. Sheriffs are responsible for protecting the courthouse. They're essentially the Secret Service and U.S. Marshal Service for the judges on the local level, and they are the physical arm of the court. So if a judge gives an order, or if there is process to be served, or property has to be relieved from someone and transferred to another, it's not going to be a guy with a black robe and a gavel going down to get it done. It's going to be a sheriff's office employee or sheriff's office deputy. We're the fiscal arm of the court. That's a very different distinction. The other thing that is very different in terms of sheriff's office versus police department is a sheriff is the only law enforcement executive in the nation that answers directly to the people with no one in between. Okay, police chiefs answer to mayors and to city councils. Sheriffs answer directly to the people. And look, neither is right, neither is wrong. They are unique. They are both positive and good in their own right. But sheriffs have a unique relationship with the people that they serve. And in my experience, if you look at my agency in Douglas County, my investigators, my deputies, they're good at doing the big things. They can do a homicide investigation. They can do a shooting investigation, big robbery investigation, but they also pride themselves on being good at the little things. We still respond to every 911 call. We still take reports in person in unincorporated Douglas County. And we focus on the quality of life issues like crazy drivers, things like that, because I have to be in tune with my bosses. And the people of Douglas County are my boss. And I know, we've actually surveyed this, that the vast majority of my bosses want us to focus on those quality of life issues in their neighborhood, in addition to keeping the violence down across the community.
Right. You mentioned high speed. Isn't that a big problem anymore?
Oh yeah, it's the top concern.
Really?
Wow. We do, we're an accredited agency, and so we have to do surveying of our bosses. Okay. And again, far and away, I'd say high 60s to low 70% of people in the county, it's probably one of their top concerns is crazy driving. Because statistically, people know when you leave your house in Douglas County, you have a higher probability of getting killed, losing your spouse, losing one of your kids, losing one of your parents or a friend at the hands of a crazy negligent driver than you do in armed criminal. And that's just a fact.
Well, it's statistical reality. Of that group, crazy driver, what percentage would be considered a drunk driver or under some influence versus just plain vanilla Sam the Angry Ginger just out driving in an angry man?
It's in your hot car and drives at 160 up and down the street.
I got to talk to you about that later, Sam, by the way. That's
all right.
It's a mix. I'd say, you got your drunk drivers that are a problem. Huge problem.
And a lot of those are repeat offenders, are they not?
A lot of them. And we're seeing more and more of them in the daytime, too. Like those things, professional drunks that just...
professional drunks. Few of those.
But then also, you've got your distracted drivers. The ones that are either texting or driving or not paying attention or literally watching a show. And functionally they're just as impaired as a drunk driver.
Sure.
Reaction time is terrible. And then you've got the I'd put it in 4 categories. Category 3 is the road ragers. Okay, the people that are just aggressive road ragers.
It's not me.
Say 40% of them are
Honda.
redheads. No, just kidding.
What'd you say?
40% of aggressive drivers are probably redheads. And then the 4th category, and this is the one that our sheriff's office has really prided ourselves in going after and earn the endearment of the public, and that is the illegal street racer crowd. I mean,
that's really a growing. I mean, there was just one somewhere we just read about it this weekend, and they beat somebody up and set the car on fire and all that. But it was this whole illegal gathering for street racing. Is that going on in Nebraska?
Where do they do that in Douglas County? All over? Is there a specific track?
all over,
Everywhere.
all over the city, and it's different today because back when we were younger,
Sure.
yeah, we had muscle cars, and
I would say we had muscle cars.
I went to North High. It's kind of an urban high school. Did we drive fast sometimes? Sure. Maybe out on a desolate stretch of Highway 75, or out on
Nobody around.
some blacked out area, McKinley, with no intersections, and we didn't have the ability to. It's like you had to go fast for a quarter mile and then slow down, and we didn't have the ability to turn cars, computers like they do today,
Sure.
But now you literally have gangs of these aggressive drivers that are street racing each other around in the city, just in circles on the interstate system. And
Wow.
people are tired of it. It's the crime they see in front of them every day.
Yeah.
Peg and I ventured out in Lincoln on a Friday night, which is rare. We went to Waverly, and we went to eat and took our grandkids, and we were driving our grandkids back, and we were on O Street. And O Street from about 84th to about where Gateway Mall is, about 66, there were a couple street racers running in and out of traffic. And again, we hadn't been on O Street at that time, night on a Friday, a long time, and it was shocking what they were doing. And it was unbelievable.
It's criminal. I mean, it's not.
It's shocking how dangerous it is,
Yeah.
not to just them, but to everybody around who's driving.
So one thing we had to retool as an agency culture is I told my staff, I go, this is no longer a ticket. Okay, if you're just a traditional speeder, if you don't use a turn signal, you get a ticket. But if you are driving in a willful, reckless behavior, if you're street racing, if you're driving in a reckless behavior, that is a misdemeanor crime. And so I sent out the mandate to all my staff. I go, you know what? Street racers, get ready. If you want to drive like this in Douglas County, you better get a bike and a flip phone from your grandma, because you're going to need both. Because I'm going to impound your car. I'm going to take you to jail.
Yep.
And if you have any electronic devices on you that my deputies believe have probable cause to believe contains evidence of your driving crimes, okay? And a lot of these guys will memorialize their driving crimes on their phones or on in-car entertainment devices.
Yep.
And we're going to seize those and write search warrants on them, because, we have to save innocent people's lives. We had a guy who was street racing down 144th Street at L in a Jeep Trailhawk, and he hit, according to estimates, no, I actually think they found this from his computer, he hit 174 miles an hour.
You always go that fast.
He hit a pole, and the car just obliterated, split in half, and he died.
I think so.
We had to send a strong message. And so in Douglas County, when we catch these guys doing it, you're going to jail, we're impounding your car. We're gonna put your mugshot up on social media and share it with the news and ask for tips if if the public knows of any other street crimes, driving crimes you've been involved in. And you know what? We consistently get tips. It's not about naming and shaming these guys. We consistently get tips from people going, "Oh my gosh, that guy, he almost hit me. He drove crazy here."
Wow.
It helped us get more witnesses on the crimes, but it has helped bend the curve on the behavior.
I was just going to have deterred any behavior.
It has. I mean, even though as a overall county, we're still trending up in traffic fatalities. we're way down in unincorporated Douglas County. Crazy drivers and street racers know you cross that county boundary between city, county, and the CAT team, the community action team for the sheriff's office finds you, you're in trouble. We've limited our traffic fatalities, our actual accident fatalities, not intentional, accidents. We've only had one in unincorporated Douglas County year to date, and no, knock on wood, we'd like to keep it that way through the end of the year.
So so the other group besides the street racers, we hear them all the time. The kids on the crotch rocket motorcycles, and it does seem like they're young men, but there are 4 section roads around this neighborhood. In the summer, in particular, you hear them out at all hours. They're doing donuts. You see them, there when you go in.
You can hear them.
You can hear. I mean, the whine of the engine. They are, and you can with your ear detect the speed, and they are truly flying. Like at any moment might get left.
Similar group. These guys kind of hang together, but they are a unique subculture in that car motorcycle group. But I will tell you this, and this is one reason why, to your point, why we take such an aggressive stance with the driving crimes. There are cities across the nation where you will have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of motorcycles or four-wheelers or vehicles that will just take over a whole stretch of road, take over a whole intersection, and that was trending that way in Douglas County.
Really?
I think we were about a year or 2 away from that, and then we dropped the hammer on these guys and said it's not going to be tolerated. We've mitigated it to some extent. We actually went to one of our local driving tracks, I-29 dragway and raceway across the river in Iowa, and they gave us 100 pass cards, free pass cards, and we could hand out to the young people in this community and say, avoid going to jail, take this, drive as fast as you want, do burnouts over here. And it was wildly popular. They had a record number of people coming through their doors, but the chronic offenders still persist. And those are the ones that we're pursuing every day. Our CAT team, our community action team, is a specialized group that goes after those guys and quality of life issues. They go after them every day.
How many officers do you have? And how many officers do you have in Douglas County?
Yes.
We've got a total staff between sworn and civilian of a little over 250. We're budgeted for 162 deputies. I think right now we've had some retirements. I think we're down to mid 150 or a little lower. But the good news is we've had incredible success with recruitment. We've essentially got people knocking down the door to work for the sheriff's office.
Is that different than
It's been a marked improvement over the last 2 years, and here's my theory. We speak very bluntly and plainly when it comes to both me as the sheriff and an agency. We know what we think our public wants, regardless of their political orientation. They want to be safe. They want their families to be safe. We hit those issues. We talk about them even if they're uncomfortable, and I think that's refreshing to your typical law enforcement recruit who, wants to, of course, they want to work in a professional environment. They want to be service oriented, but most military, law enforcement, firefighters, people that are drawn to that industry are kind of predisposed to that type of
a service mentality.
Exactly. Service, but then also understanding that service requires tough decisions as well.
Yeah.
And they're not afraid to make those decisions, and you're not afraid to coach them on how to make those.
Right. We love getting. I don't care where they come from. I don't care what they look like. I don't care what gender or race they are, what part of the county or the state or the nation they come from. In addition to increasing our recruitment numbers, we've really seen improvements in our diversity numbers too. Like top 10 was this recent class was 30% female, Latinos and American males, and we're proud of that because we want to be a diverse police department, a diverse sheriff's office. So having diversity and quality it's a grand slam.
Well, I love it. And again, like Dave said, we all see the news. We all have slants, for lack of a better term, that the news presents. I mean, you listen to it, And I will admit, I am not a fan of diversity for the sake of diversity.
Right.
You said it earlier, I don't care about race, religion, creed, or color. I want the highest quality person I can get.
Highest achiever.
Highest achiever,
Mhm.
the one that has the capability to be the most successful. And again, I think we saw that and we're continuing to see it. We have certain communities that are very lax on crime. They're lax on prosecution. They're lax on a lot of things. And I have to believe the follow-on story that most of those news reports fail to report on is by implementing certain policies, by adopting certain procedures or lack of enforcement of those procedures, they're seeing incidents of crime going up.
That's another point about why sheriffs are, in my opinion, now, being a 26 and a half municipal police officer, now sheriff for 3 years, sheriffs are more important than ever in modern day society. And I'll give you an example. One of my peer sheriffs is a Democrat sheriff up in Hennepin County, Minnesota. That's Minneapolis,
Yep,
DeWanna
yep.
Witt, African American female. She's a good sheriff. And when their activists, unfortunately, they had an activist county attorney, they called him district attorney, elected, who made a public statement and said, hey, I'm no longer going to prosecute felonies or crimes that are a result of so-called routine traffic stops because I want to mitigate officers or deputies doing traffic stops because I think they're injurious on the community. Well, anyone who's a career law enforcement officer knows that's bunk. Law enforcement. I just had a deputy a couple nights ago. One of our young female deputies did a random traffic stop and arrested a guy with an active felony warrant for trafficking children. So random traffic stops work if they're done legally,
Sure.
and they're also good for the safety of the motoring public. But Sheriff Witt, again, who's a Democrat, she took a public stance, and it was tough. She stood up against her county attorney and said, "That's ridiculous," and she had all the police chiefs behind her, and she led the charge. When I go to the major county sheriffs association meetings across the country, we're a diverse group of Republican sheriffs, Democrat sheriffs, independent sheriffs. But I can tell you that 95% of us agree on probably about 80 to 90% of the issues. And that is
Regardless of your
Political affiliation. That's refreshing to hear.
and oftentimes it can put us in conflict with our own parties, and that's okay. Because
I agree.
that's another reason why sheriffs are so crucial. Sheriffs work for the people. Sheriffs can speak bluntly. And another example, I went to an FBI leadership course. It was sheriffs, police chiefs, and police commissioners. And the common theme from the police chiefs and the police commissioners were, "Gosh, I can't speak freely. I got to ask my mayor for permission to talk about this and that." And the sheriffs, 10 of us in the room, we're like, make friends with your sheriff.
Yeah.
Either become the sheriff or make friends with your sheriff. Let your sheriff speak for you, but just don't beat your sheriff up when he or she has to have the tough conversations and speak for you. Don't succumb to the risk of then doing the bidding of your mayor and then beating up your sheriff for speaking the truth on things like that. So
have your sheriff's back.
Yeah, even if it's just behind the scenes,
right?
Because sheriffs work for the people. Sheriffs have to be in touch with the pulse rate.
So, as a high visibility elected official, what's the most enjoyable part of your job?
Great question.
Service. I love motivating the men and women of the Douglas County Sheriff's Office to enhance their feeling, their position of ownership in our community. And I don't mean law enforcement owns the community. Take ownership in the safety of your community. Mm-hmm. I just had a conversation today with one of my newest deputy recruits. And I said, you're working for an agency where you can do the big things. You're going to do the fun things. You're going to be able to chase down serious criminals. But I need you to remember who your boss is. And I'm one of them. But I need you to remember who my bosses are. And so every call you take, the minute you start to feel yourself groan or grumble or roll your eyes on what kind of a call am I on here? It seems petty. Remember that person cared enough to call 911. Right. And so to them, that call means a lot to them. Yeah. And try to see it through to the extent that you can, because that's our boss.
Yeah. That's a great perspective.
Huh.
100%.
So switching out.
That's the
professional-
funnest part of the job. Honestly.
Good.
That's
Okay. The worst part.
Well, it's a politically elected position, and sometimes the politics does get a little tiring. But
Gets in the way of your real job, which is
Feedback rich
serve and
environment.
protect.
here's the thing. I think if I'm very careful that even if people want to politically joust with me, I always try to stay consistent. Try to I don't typically lock horns with people in public or call people names because I don't think people want that in their sheriff. Anyways, right? I mean,
I don't think that's one for society, as much as we might differ on that. There's some people who do.
And so I think a lot of times I definitely don't want to take the bait because I think the position of sheriff is pretty solemn. If you're, it's one thing to have a vocal sheriff. It's one thing to have a sheriff that shares, is transparent, speaks about difficult issues. But I don't think people want leaders, and especially sheriffs, that roll around in the mud,
Right.
with folks and get in politically charged arguments out in public.
It's unseemly. So I'm going to switch gears from professional. What are you doing for Thanksgiving?
Well, my son is driving back into town. My oldest son works for Kiewit. He's down in Fort Worth, so he's driving back. So I'll spend time with him, my parents, with my other kids. They'll probably have Thanksgiving with their mom, and then we'll find time to come have Thanksgiving with me. It's a good time. I got 4 kids.
Oh, good for you. So
Oldest
do I.
works for Kiewit. I got a firefighter who's my number 2 boy. He works for Omaha Fire Department. My third child is my only daughter, and she's a criminal justice major at the University of Nebraska, Omaha. She'll follow my footsteps in law enforcement. And I got a 15-year-old. He's the old soul. God only knows what he'll do, but whatever he'll do.
They'll figure it out.
They'll figure it out for sure.
Yeah.
A lot of time with family. It'll be fun.
It's good.
Man, what do you?
Same. I mean, the whole tribe coming in, doing all the Thanksgiving stuff, and can't tell you how much I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
It's all the food, all the fun, all the friends,
We play
everything.
games.
But you just don't have all the hype of Christmas presents.
Try something different this year. I think I've got a big smoked ham that I got. I bought a half pig with my dad, and I think I'm going to try to maybe
Smoke that?
glaze that.
Yeah.
Sounds fantastic.
Give that a try, and then have a bunch of ham leftovers.
We're having a roasted strip loin, prime strip loin.
Wow.
Yeah, encrusted. Nice deal on it. The kids are excited about that. Get away from the traditional turkey. We're carnivores, beef eaters in our family, so everybody's excited about that.
What are you doing?
Having Thanksgiving with my mom's side of the family tomorrow. I'm going to the Nebraska football game Friday, and then we're having Thanksgiving Day. I'm going up to Grand Island. So just
Grand Island.
my dad's sister is hosting Thanksgiving on my dad's side. So yeah.
Be remiss asking you about last Saturday and go big red and to this point.
Yeah, that was tough to watch.
Students' perspective.
I think a lot of people are pretty kind of giving up after that performance. I don't know that a lot of it's gonna be well. It is gonna be like
Underground.
Excuse
So
me.
Nebraska.
oh yeah. Who do you cheer for? That's sad. I get it. Because he's
degree.
2
I
degrees.
get that. I get that. Well, that's 2-1. You should be cheering for Nebraska.
Foundational years or in 4 years in college. Would you not admit that?
Yeah.
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 In Iowa City.
Yeah.
It's
I
a
don't
great
know.
place to go to college. Now, what's the sentiment on campus about our volleyball team? They're taking names and kicking ass.
I think a lot of people just, I don't know, expect us to win every week. They don't really expect anything different. it'll be interesting once we get to the tournament what that looks like. Because a lot of the Big Ten teams we've just been dominating. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Yeah.
Catch a couple games.
Yeah.
It'd be
It is quite an environment.
quite an environment.
Hey, before we wrap up, I want to make sure I mention something. You guys have a pretty special sheriff here, Terry Wagner.
Yeah,
Who's
been a sheriff a long time.
He's been a mentor to me, and you guys are so fortunate down in this county to have had him for as many years as he served the people of this county. There's going to be some big shoes to fill, and I would just like to say, tell him this personally, but I also like to say it publicly that I really appreciate him and thank him for all his years of service. He is the embodiment of what a sheriff is and should be. We're lucky to have had him for as many years.
We're
as
lucky to have him in
are.
Lancaster County.
We are.
Yeah.
I'm thankful you thought to bring that up. That was
Yeah.
very kind, and we agree. He's been a terrific sheriff.
I was going to ask you who your mentor was because you have great leadership skills, and I'm sure they're ingrained in you, and I'm sure you're self-made, but you had to learn along the way.
A lot. I mean, my dad was probably some of the biggest influence on my life. I learned from the best when it comes to crime reduction and watching Taj Modern for as many years. As he rose to the ranks of being one of the best police chiefs in the nation. And just all the various people that I've met and worked with. You are a compilation of the people that you worked with and around, and I appreciate each and every one. And we're still a work in progress. So.
We talked
We all
about
are.
that.
We all.
Sam, you got a long way to go. I mean, just by years, not
Yeah, I know what you meant. Yeah.
Sheriff, what a pleasure to have you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much for making it. Sheriff, enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sam, you've got our wrap up.
Yeah, so if you liked our video and following us, subscribe to our page, follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, X, all the pages. We appreciate all the help and all the support.
And go big red.
Happy
Thank
Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.